The 2019 convention season is nearing its end, and I'm less than 1,200 books away from breaking 20,000 sales for the year. I've got 2 conventions to go, and both of them are going to be very difficult. Not despite, but because of the fact that people are spending more money during the holidays, I have come to the conclusion that when it comes to independent comics, that the masses tend to be a lot more reserved. The reason for this is simple. When we get into holiday mode, we're looking to spend a lot more money, not just on ourselves, but on others as well. And let's face it, conventions aren't cheap. You have to factor in a lot of expenses. For example, if you want to meet a celebrity, that could easily run you $100 or more. If you see some cool art on the floor, that too could run you a couple $100. And then you come across that rare item you've been looking for, which also costs $50 to $100. Before you know it, you realize that you still have to have enough money for other things like food and or parking. Or, since it's the holidays, gifts for your loved ones. This is the reason why many of us independent creators tend to wrap things up by the beginning to the middle of November. But this year, I want to see how far I can go, and I'm going to factor in a new strategy that is going to let me get the results I want. But first, a little recap. Over the last 2 months, I've been running very low on YI SOON SHIN Warrior and Defender number 4. In fact, things got so bad that I completely ran out of my inventory and had to go to 2 different comic shops and see if they could spare some copies. I was lucky enough to find 2. That got me through Grand Rapids Comic-Con, but after that I was fresh out and waiting for a bulk shipment to arrive from China. It finally came on the week of GalaxyCon, which is where my latest battle is about to take place. Another book that's been missing in action is MARX, which is completely sold out. Fortunately, I had another batch of books on the way alongside issue 4 of V. By the time I got everything, I was literally on pins and needles. There was a very good chance I wouldn't have had either of these books in time for this show. I have no idea how I got so lucky, but I wasn't about to question it. Now that I had a full arsenal, it was time to come in with a foolproof strategy that will allow me to achieve 3 things before my season is officially over. My first goal is going to be to get my volume up. My battle-hardened single-issue bundles will get me there. Even in the most harsh convention environments, my single issues are always capable of selling out. Therefore, I'm going to forego bringing graphic novels with me for the next 2 shows I do, and will instead focus on compensating by bringing even more single issues. My second objective is to give MARX an extra boost. If I no longer have to pitch YI SOON SHIN graphic novels, I can jump from single issues to tacking on MARX for an extra $15, and that's the key to my strategy. The most expensive item on my table at GalaxyCon was only $15. The third objective for this strategy is an important one. During the twilight of the season, you can expect to get disappointed very easily because many people are going to shut you down no matter what. Therefore, I needed to keep my expectations realistic so that I don't burn myself out. We're about to see how my strategy pans out on this week's episode of Onward with Onrie. Because I'm ready for a serious break from the convention front. Doesn't mean that I don't love what I do or that I won't continue to do it, but I also gotta create comics and I need time to work on stuff. That's what the off season is primarily for. Now, if I can make just enough money to get through the winter, then I'll be okay. The toughest part about the off season is that I'm not making, but instead spending money, because production costs money, and I also need to book future shows. I need to have enough of a reserve in place to get me through all this, and expenses love to just pop up out of nowhere and hit you right in the gut. GalaxyCon in Louisville, Kentucky was a fairly packed show for what it was. It didn't seem to attract much of a comic buying crowd, but I knew there was nothing I could do about that. My position on the floor wasn't great either. I was in the center of an aisle, and there were lots of drop periods where literally no one would come down our aisle for a good 45 minutes. The first hour of all 3 days sucked because Artist Alley was on the back of the floor and people creeped in slowly. But again, this wasn't a dead show. I knew that if I worked the floor hard enough that I could get the results I was looking for. Despite the fact that I was exhausted and kept telling myself that I was ready for a break, I was still in the thick of battle and needed to stay strong in order to get through the weekend. Psychologically, I was in no mood to sell comics because I'm ready to be in a secluded, creative environment so I can get some writing done and layouts drawn up for the next issue of V. But in order to get there and not stress out too much during the off season, I have to fight through all the rejection and push onward. That is the only way out of this. And believe me, there were some points where I got so worked up during this show that I wanted to pack up my stuff and leave early. Had I done that, I would have instantly regretted it. It was more important to weather the storm and stay strong than to give in to my own desires to be away from the convention scene. This was not an easy show, but it wasn't a bad one by any means. Shows like this can be just as important as the bigger ones. You must always maintain a strong front, no matter the odds, victory seekers. If you can manage that, you will be an unconquerable force on the convention front, always. In the end, my strategy prevailed. I sold through everything I brought with me with 2.5 hours to spare. Time to go home and go on a much-needed vacation with my family. There is one convention left for me to do, and I'm at the cusp of reaching my goal. Next week's episode will see the end of the Twilight arc, and will also be the show's season finale, which means we're going out with a bang. It'll be all-out war as I bring the 2019 convention season to a close at the December edition of Steel City Comic-Con. One way or another, I'm going to see this through, and luckily I'll have Kevin with me along for the ride as we try to score a redemptive win for Hunter Killer Collectibles while giving YI SOON SHIN one last shot in the arm before the year ends. I'll be back next week to share my experiences with you, and until then, onward to victory!